What airship are we on, James? Is it 821?
It is 821, the big 8 and the little 2 and the even littler 1. Although 1's kind of a bigger number, oddly, if you think about it. It's like 1 is really the biggest number, really. I mean, a 0 is going to come in and be like, dude, I got a bigger number than you. But, technically numbers get smaller. Wow. Numbers get smaller as they get bigger. 2 is smaller than 1, right? And 3 is definitely smaller than 2. And 4 is, so numbers work backwards. There, we figured that out. We can go home early.
There we go. Great. We can all go home now.
That's good stuff.
Though.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So welcome to episode 821 of Airship. It's great to see everyone here. Welcome aboard. All of you just joining us. It's a lovely Wednesday. I still don't have a beard. Sorry, don't know what to tell you to do. We can talk about it. The closest thing I can do to explain this, brace yourself, is I'm trans-hermaphroditic. I'm glad I got that off my chest. Some of you might be wondering, what the fuck does that mean? And if you read Ark of Baphomet, you've already known. But if you break down the agenda, the trans agenda, and you think about what that word really means, then there is a mode. I am living in a body that does not match the full mode of who I am. And the full mode of who I think I am is this Aedum character that I started to talk about in Ark of Baphomet. This eighth adrenal. And if all of us were eight adrenals and we came in with 7, it would profoundly create the sexes in the way that they are now. I realize I'm repeating myself, but just in case no one's heard this is kind of, it would explain why you're attracted to the person that has not that you need explanation for this, but it's like one of the main guttural instinctual attractions that you have for someone is that they have an adrenal gland that you don't have. And when you pair up, it's not that this only works if you used to have that adrenal gland. That's the important part. And by having that and then coming here and not having that, you are born with a phantom sense of missing something. And you're tuned and primed to look for your soulmate, your twin flame, that missing piece of you. This is the words we use to describe it. This is my missing piece. I found my missing piece. And this is all true, by the way. I'm not even taking this away. I've really thought that I found my vagina a few times in the world. I was a young, strapping 17-year-old and was convinced that Jenny Frankenberg had my vagina. And I was like, hey, come on. Can I just see it? I just need to make sure that that is my vagina. Can I just see it? And that like explains a lot. I swear we're not going to talk all about this today, but it does bring to what I do want to suggest to you all. Down syndrome is a particular kind of genetic anomaly that we call a genetic disorder. I don't object to us referring to it as a disorder because we pierce our ears, but we'll insist that if you cut a word into your knee, that you are mentally disturbed. And there's a social context to most of I think all of what we consider to be okay behavior. And that behavior really is more based on just majority rule, how most people feel about things. And we don't really like to admit this about ourselves, but it's true. And because of that, we end up calling the Down syndrome child a disorder, and I'm okay with that. But I want to point out that this is a 24th chromosome. The Down syndrome baby has 24 chromosomes. They not 23. I'm not saying that it gives you the same, it doesn't give you an eighth adrenal, but it completes a circuit in a very different way that you and I don't know. And one of the profound ways that it completes that circuit is through empathy and compassion. A Down syndrome person is typically the most compassionate person in the room. It has that baby-like quality that makes them extremely vulnerable to a level of, we need to call it a disorder, because we can't trust ourselves with things that are vulnerable. It's why we have to watch our own kids. And that even when people have been pulled out of the wild and tried to live in society, those people have been ripped off by society. It's like Drew. It's like those people have been like ripped off by the people that are in society. The civilized ones cannibalize the people that are not civilized. It's not the other way around. It's not the other way around. And if you take this and you look at Down syndrome, this 24th chromosome, you are looking at a child that really does not carry the equipment to discern deception. It's not that they do not, I think, compassionate your wants. It's that they could not imagine the texture of needing to deceive to get it. And I think most of this comes from their ability to disassociate from their own level, from their own survival. I think babies have this ability. I'm not saying that all of a baby's power comes from its ability to white belt its way out of all danger, but a good bit of it does. A good bit of just blind courage comes from just pure ignorance. And we've seen this. We know this. This is a real thing. But I think with the Down syndrome case, I think it goes farther. And I think that the part that makes it go farther is that the sanctity of the connection is on a different level. And it's a special place that we as a collective haven't gotten to yet. And the Down syndrome child is giving us a precursor of what's to come. And this is going to be kind of hard to grips with, maybe to grapple with, but if you've seen the movie Minority Report, there's these chicks in milk. They're these ladies, they dip in milk from a very young age, and they sit in the milk, and they're like, oh, 38th and parallel, black eye, blood clubs, and they're predicting the future because they're precog. And the idea that they're precog is because they're connected into a hive. They don't have a collective ego necessarily to defend. They're completely vulnerable, but at the same time, they're completely perceptive. They gain all sense of perception. And we already inherently know through the Oracle mythology that we gain perception at the cost of, at the amplitude of innocence comes this kind of perception. A child sees the truth in the room. And I think a lot of this has to do with Hades, that the child's able to see directly into Hades because they're not aware of the repercussions of their vision. And without being aware of those repercussions, the amygdala is unable to dampen or darken the truth. And Down syndrome babies, they do not darken the truth. They live in that same state. And like I said, I've been thinking a lot about this whole trans thing from the idea of a plant. What if the human stock is decelerating out of we must reproduce, we must reproduce, we must reproduce, and switching into we must flower, we must flower, we must flower, that our collective sexuality would suffer what looked like a suffrage, a massive change. A eugenics system would appear to go into effect because the gears would shift and the human creature would start to produce on a different level. And when you think about what this looks like, it's not necessarily going to be based on survival. And if it's not necessarily based on survival, it no longer needs the pinnacle of a binary to survive. If we were a plant that was here to not just produce spores, but if each spore was supposed to be its own species, and you were that spore, and that you were that species, you would need to return to a hermaphroditic state at some point in order for your species to propagate. Now, I have a delicate definition of species here that I want us to consider, because Van Gogh is a species that has survived the terrain of time through the archetype of our own recognition. We proliferate his seed in the exact same way that you would sexually reproduce. It's the exact same way. It's a propagandic dilation that is tempted, that brings in, that attracts members of the opposite. In other words, people that are not Van Gogh'd would be anyone that has not met the species Van Gogh, is a virgin, and that Van Gogh would occupy that land, would implant its seed in that soil, would much like corn. Monsanto has developed a kind of corn that shuts down the ability for other corn that's not its corn to reproduce. And that you and I might argue that, well, that's just because genetic corporate bullshit, psychopathic, yeah, and all that's great, but in the South, that's happening all the time. There are laws that are like, hey man, we don't want anyone that smokes marijuana to reproduce in this state. Now, you're not going to find that on the books, but what the goal is that we don't want anyone who supports this to enter into a relaxed state while they're here. Because if they're relaxed, there's someone who's going to touch a ho-ho, and there's going to be another one, and now that's spread. And we treat terrorism the same way, and we treat Down syndrome the same way. We try and eradicate growth. We're constantly eradicating our own growth. Now, if you picture how is a Down syndrome child going to survive in the wilderness, the answer is he's not. He's not. He's going to survive inside a pumice, inside a nebulous epidermis called society. It's the milk that you put the precog in. Put precog back in bowl, right? Take precog, take clothes off, shave all their hair. I don't know why it's important. You just shave their hair. Eyebrows got to go. Put them in the milk. They're safe now. All their needs are met. Their food, their nutrients, they have no fear of survival. Their only job is to precog. If you consider what's happening now psychologically, you could argue that we are shifting gears and moving into that state, and we've been trying to do that for 2,000, 3,000 years, and it just takes a while. And the natural inclination or push against those things, orthodoxy, is a kind of inflammation that was necessary for the humanity plant to stave off and not be so trusting of the environment, right? And so any change comes in as a threat instantly. It's an instant threat, and we call this traditionalism, and it makes sense. And we should be as proud of our children that are here to uphold traditional values. This is my opinion. As we are not, but should be proud of the ones that are on the cutting edge and constantly challenging who and what it is we do. You're watching kids take HRT hormones, and after you're disgusted by it or moved by it or inspired by it or whatever, I don't want to curtail any of your reactions at all. I want you to look at this longer thing that's unfolding. I don't care how you judge it. It doesn't matter to me. One thing that nature's taught me is that I can look at it and judge it all I want. It doesn't fucking care. It's not gonna stop. It's not gonna stop. You know, I had a bear walk in the house the other day. It's like it's a bear, and I'm the only one that's going to have a problem if I misunderstand that. It's nature, and of course nature's deadly. That's what life is. The definition of life is deadly. It would have to be, right? It's how we propagate. So keep being paranoid, keep being affirming, keep being traditional. I have my own ways of doing that. I have my own. I've always been a prude. Sexually, I've always been a prude. I've always felt that the intimacy of my relationship with someone would be almost directly congruent with my proximity of genitalia rubbiness, and I like this about me, but I also recognize that I believe that this entire thing came from a time when you and I as humans didn't even know what intimate meant, and that we had to develop something called genitals, and some of us had to have some of them, some of us didn't have to have others, to even understand that there's something called intimates. We call it intimate wear. And that through the procurement of intimacy, we gained the understanding of architecture on a psychic level, the idea of enclosing something and prohibiting just anyone from seeing it. There's a red velvet curtain, right? Employees only or VIPs only. This gets us excited. We go to restaurants that specifically prohibit people like us from going in the kitchen. That's where we want to eat. Most of our money goes to that. So we seek out this. It's not like it's a problem. Where we fall short is looking at the longer picture, I think, sometimes. And I don't think all of us need to. I think it's too complicated. I think if you're still in a binary of Democrat, Republican, I think it's going to be really hard to even get you to even consider that there's something called libertarian. I think that's almost like a wasted effort. It'd be akin to me going to the Super Bowl, where everyone's paid thousands of dollars to be there and try and convince everybody that football's dumb. Even if you could do it, all it would do is hurt. It wouldn't really help anything at all. So I don't even want to spread this message to anyone. But I've had this vision. I could be wrong. But I'm that dude that you don't want to live. I know you don't want me to live in the village, because I have these visions sometimes, and you're like, fuck, dude, why are you saying that? But also you're kind of like, well, what does the vision dude say? Oh, fuck him. I know, but okay, what does he say? Oh God, he's talking about, it's fine. I don't judge, but I'm having this vision, this augur vision, where I'm holding one eye up and it's pointing at you and it's saying, oh, there is a time when we may physiologically, quite naturally, develop the ability to not enter puberty, because puberty is just one of 1,000 gears that we have inside of us that we only change to when we're climbing a hill. When we need to reproduce, we change into second gear. And second gear means two. You get two lumps. I don't know what that meant. Wow, that's interesting. But you get two lumps up at the chest and one at the bottom, one longer, one sometimes longer, or whatever it is. That's a gear. And Down syndrome baby is a fucking gear. Androgynous imaginitarian is a gear. A prepubescent person that never enters puberty. All I'm trying to say is I don't know if that should necessarily be labeled a failure if we're going to judge culture. If anything, you might use it to label, holy fuck, look how much delicacy we can guarantee. Do you understand? Look how long we can sustain the bubble of childhood. Why is this bad again, is what I'm asking. Truly, why is this bad? And I ask this because, guys, the world is not real. People are believing in flying ceiling fans and trigger weapons that the father of a dude who has a cocaine suitcase for the 17,000th time, and everyone's like, oh my God, he's trying to buy a handgun, but he's secretly doing drugs, and everyone's walking around like that's fucking normal, like that's fucking real. Everyone is. Everyone. And if you question that, they're looking at you like, what the fuck's your problem? So why are we insisting that this is the pinnacle of like where we're going? If you think like a flower, everything I'm saying isn't even crazy. Everything I'm talking about is actually pretty natural. There are stages. You may remember that fennel is a perfect example of this. That the fennel stalk, mythologically, long before genetics even weighed in on this, that the fennel stalk has been considered the carrier of Prometheus. This something about that has just carried this immortality gene all along. And when you look at the fennel, for some reason, it's directly tied to the liver, that it really helps the liver a lot. And of course, as you know, liver is the only organ in your body that can regenerate itself 95% from nothing, from like being 5% in size. It can recomplete itself 95%. The only thing close to that would be your epidermis, but the epidermis kind of gets disqualified because the epidermis can't actually form the dead layer until the younger layer is healthy. So it won't even begin to shed itself. This is why first degree burns and second degree burns and third degree burns, there's like, yeah, this one hurts, this one fucking hurts, this one doesn't really hurt that bad. I mean, there's these different levels of it's not necessarily regeneration, is what I'm saying. In fact, if you look at what the epidermis is, the actual outer layer of the skin, its job is to kamikaze. Its job is to die and to literally lay its dead body over the living one to protect it from the grenade of reality, from the grenade of the sun. I want to remind everybody that plutonium is of course, Pluto and Hades, and plutonium is the one element that almost at the top, there's faster elements, but when it's exposed to the witness of the sun, it decays. It's not able to hold reality. Plutonium, the element of Hades itself, when we see it in the world, it instantly loses half of its viability every moment it's witnessed. It decays to such a degree because it's not real in the same way we think things are real. I don't know how this works, and I think that we need precogs to get us there. I think that the Atlantean Lemurian idea that we have in our mind is probably a place. Look, I'm not saying the only way to get there is to go trans or to everyone to avoid puberty, but I just hope that you can see why this realm of thinking probably is right on. Because first of all, it dismisses us from having to just say everyone's just insane for no reason at all. That we actually get to look at this path and go, oh, I can kind of see why we're sort of, uh, bumbling our way down that way.
I still think the trans, it's like an echo of the past, and kind of like the self immolation of today. Everything seems like such a repeat, of Roman. It's like it's really it's really moot to me whether or not Roman society existed based on Latin translation. And it also doesn't matter to me about any number of Tartarian mud flood theories, although that ties in, because without that, you wouldn't really have a comparison. So you can't really look down on it. And the fact is that there's architecture that's used and reused, and it just goes right along with Roman history. When things are falling apart, taxes get higher, there's no middle class, people can't live, the state takes control of agriculture. They basically had socialism, and it just hasn't been recognized as socialism. And so this thing about us against socialism, I think that's just us projecting on an echo of the past, on a repeat, and then, but somebody's got to know about it. And so then it brings up the whole great work thing that a long time ago that it just, sorry, James, but it always sticks with me, where I just said, this great work, it's so fucking mediocre, except for unless you consider the scale. And it's like, okay, so if you're not considering the scale, and it's like, I still think it's mediocre, but only in the sense that for every echo of the past, we supposedly have a slightly better way. Like if we're eating each other, then we're just vilifying each other verbally now. Or, it might not even be that much of a difference. But it just seems to me that, once again, it's the scale and the consistency about how every category of just, of recorded Roman history has just completely been repeated in politics, just verbatim, chronologically. And it's just, except that every category is just like slightly better. But if you add that all together, it's really something. So then it's, after all, not mediocre, because it's one of those things that's cumulative. Like certain things, like lead in your body, or there's certain things that can accumulate, and I think this is one of those things. The great work is like a tiny incremental accumulative kind of a thing. And so to me that opens up a lot of of how people in the know would do what they do, because if you're just looking in this window of like every category, that's pretty easy to break down and just say, in this category, we're slightly better. Okay, so everything's good because it's slightly better than what happened in the past. And, I guess that, to me, we're living in a world where things are slightly better. So that's not a lot of meat to dig into for people. That's kind of like a
Yes, this is the
ephemeral,
slightliest better apocalypse ever. This is the slightliest
yeah,
better
slightly is
apocalypse
better.
ever.
Anyway, I'll stop now, but I feel like I'm in a mood or something, so
No, good.
that's
No, hey,
what came
I,
to
I,
mind.
Like I said, I think that the thoughts that I'm saying are pretty creepy, and I don't even want anyone to agree. I'm just in the milk, man. I'm just telling you guys what I see. I do believe it though. I wouldn't be sharing it with you if I didn't. It really rings true to me
But
on a pretty
you
deep
know
level.
that corn thing really hits a sore spot with me because they here's where they do that. With their big Monsanto factory. I used to have this job where I'd drive by it every day on my way out to the sand hills. Way out in the north, and but first they had like the big lawyer team that would go around and they'd spend the money and then they'd come in and they'd inspect your corn, and if it had crossed with their corn, then they'd take your corn or sue you. But then that's too much work, and so now they come up with this other thing because they know that um, even though there's lots of people that say we have organic corn, that's just because the loopholes in organic. If you make People will break it down into different categories, and if you make less than $6,000 in each category, you don't have to be inspected, and you can still call yourself organic. So it really could be anything if it's a small farmer in that category. But people know that if you grow dent corn or popcorn, it's resistant to the Monsanto gene, and so people were just saying, okay, I'm not going to grow sweet corn over it. Like the only place in Nebraska that is this big popcorn place, that sells organic popcorn, but you can't, since it cross pollinates in the open air, there's no way you can really stop it because there's not enough uh, rules or anything. But, that's a pretty aggressive move to like epigenetically. It's not just other corn, it's other plants. It's epigenetically stops an entire biome, like wherever they do. It's like they're basically saying, it may spread or it may not spread, but we're spraying it, and this biome is ours. We own it down to the whatever level, and so that's just a new thing where I don't know what'll happen, but I'm sure I'll find out because I'll hear about it as soon as somebody's corn doesn't reproduce.
Yeah.
Maybe like
Well,
next year.
the good news is Quetzalcoatl, we've been engineering corn longer than we can even trace humans. So it's probably safe to say that we have actually Monsanto the fuck out of this corn long time ago. And it has a nice resiliency to kind of reset almost because it's amazing. There's a deep pun there. Mo, go ahead.
Yeah, but
Hey,
Hello,
uh,
everybody.
I, hey Mo.
I thought my turn.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
can I
you were up.
talk?
You were up first, Mo, but Lori's coming
Okay.
right next. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. First of all, hello, everybody, and hello, James. And yeah, I hope I got my shit together. What you're talking pop so much thoughts in my mind. I got so many inspirations. It's almost 2:30 at night here. So I hope what I talk would make sense. What you um, share here, maybe if you grow up in a Western civilization or religious Western civilization, they will tell that's blasphemy, or that you won't put a mythological point into the development of technology. And the good thing, what I talked earlier, that the religions are like steps, like window updates. What you talk make total sense in the Quran. In the Quran, they said we're not the first creation, we're fifth or sixth creation. Maybe we was before. Well, what fits perfectly with my slogan from Babylon to Metropolis. What you shared with Ark of Baphomet, that's like Möbius loop in a repeat, like the old travel, what we call from the ancients in Lemuria, they can communicate without talking. Yeah, maybe they were plugged into technology and they don't have to need worse. With Wi-Fi, like so on, you know. And I think the trans agenda is a step between the real transformation of us, that we put or cut pieces of body or organs, genitalia, before we put in technology. You know, this have to become normal before that have to become normal, and the common edge, or the point where all history meet is, you know, we always create the Tower of Babel before it crashes down. The empire must become big and very huge, that we breaking barriers. We are not at that point now. Maybe we began to build the Tower of Babel now, you know, and all in this imperial things in Lemuria and so on, technology, all these things become so huge that it collapse one day, and we lived that loop. And I shared this in my work too. Maybe it's you know, for a traditionalist, this we are going to hell. This is the road to hell where we drive through, you know. For someone who want to who want to discover new horizons, we are road to paradise. So it's all the perception thing, and it's yeah. Thank you for your sharing. It popped so much thoughts in my mind, and it fits so perfect. You know, I don't write books. That's why we resonate, and that's how life is. You know, you bring a book, and like all development and in the world, somebody invents a car, and that inspires so much people. Like you tell the one guy, the first we're walking a mile under 3 minutes in 1930. You know, it takes thousands of years, and then in the first year 10 others. That's what Pi said. We have to discover this. And I think all technology, there's nothing new under the sun. You know, the items that put Edison together for hundreds of years, when someone other put this 1,000 years ago, the light bulb, there will be light. You know, the things are always there. We invent shit, we discover it. And that's the path we discover. And yeah, it's all based in nature. The technology, the math, the mythology, all is there, man. It's and it's beautiful.
If you think about morphic resonance and there being like a massively complicated field that as time changes, that, you know, the shape of that field changes, then it would be quite natural that discovery would simply be the eddies in that field that we consider good ideas or genius would simply formicate. They would condense and grow, and it would look like we discovered them, when in fact they appeared and we saw them again, which would be the same
like
kind of
frequency,
thing.
you know. Yeah, it's like frequency. When the collective mind raise a new frequency, we discover new horizons.
Yep.
You know, we must. We have the pioneers that go for themselves. Maybe a long time ago, but with the time it becomes normal, you know, because everyone sees for 100 years
you're not wrong
racism
about
was a good thing, you know. Oh, pardon, go on.
Well, just about the corn, you know, it goes maybe a little bit deeper than you think. What? I'm here where it happens, where the ritual happens.
Oh my God! I hope that. I'm
See,
sorry if
corn,
that felt bad. I was enjoying you.
You know, the corn is it's demon technology, you could call it. You change the shape, you know, you're adding, you know, insect and weasel liver things, you know, to like tomatoes, or, you know, you're adding other things, and then you're watering it with the irrigation from the aquifer of the pristine, like sacred waters. So it's like, it's about opposites. And so it's a ritual. So you sacrilege the shape of something, you know, and the proof of it is the qualitative aspects of the corn are not as good as the old style. So I still use that as a standard. And so, you know, it's demon technology. It's just not as good. It's force. You know, you're making this demon shape, like as you've talked about. You make this shape and it will come through and it will be that shape. And then you bathe it, you baptize it in these pristine waters. You know, they're pristine. You know, they're not the waters like we have to use in the city. You know, they're out of the sandhills, you know, just like magical waters that nobody knows where they come from, and just wantonly sprayed in the air. And nobody, like all the people, all the woke community people, like whenever I bring up the water, it's just, I'm always just like, yeah, if you're not talking about the water, you know, then there's really not a lot for me to talk about, because that's the big elephant in the room that everybody should be talking about. And, you know, don't worry about if there's eastern cedar trees growing, because they're not, you know, native, and they usually would get burned up by grass fires. It's so stupid, the effort people put into that, but, and don't even care about the water, you know, the university people. But anyway, that's like a ritual that goes on, and that's how it works. If you didn't have that water, it wouldn't work. Like if you were using city water, I don't think it would work very good. And the thing about the Down syndrome, see, I have a little experience with that, and a Down syndrome, like, you know, you're like, well, what's the trade-off? What's the difference? Well, for one thing, you can't lie. You lose your ability to lie, or lie well. Like you can just not say something, but you're not going to be a very good liar. You're not going to tell a story. So you've been stripped of that ability. And of course, you don't know what you're doing wrong. And who knows what that looks like. If there was like a reset, it might look like something like Down syndrome. Like there might have to be a layer of society to genetically reset that would look something like that. And you wouldn't know any better. You know, there might be incest and things like that. And it would maybe genetically reset the hermaphroditic, you know, as a transition, because there's always a transition. And it's like that type of ritual, you know, it's like feedback. It's like microphone feedback that's screeching. That's right. You're creating with the, as I call it, demon, you know, the demon shape of the demon seed corn, you know, it's creating this frequency that when you compare it with the water, that's a different frequency. And so there's a dissonance, and that's why it's forced. So the corn grows based on the power of that force. That's my understanding of how the corn works, you know, just based on my observation and my genetic knowledge of things. So I'll sort of mention that, because I don't know if people really have that understanding of it. Not, you know, as, of course, you know, speculative as always. But
Lori, I know it's been a while, but did you still have something?
Yeah, I'd like to speak.
Please go ahead.
There's so much on that. Good to see you. I wanted to speak on the trans, because I have a experiential experience with it, because I have 10 grandchildren from one daughter, and one of them, the oldest one, is a they and a them. And I knew her when she was an itty bitty baby, and she came in different. And to see the seed of my lineage, because the waters of the mother in the umbilicus shares blood with the daughter, and it's quantumly entangled to the whole mother's line and to my mother's line, and all the way in both directions. What I witnessed with all 10 of these grandchildren from 22 to 6 is they're all different. Nothing like I was, nothing like Bianca was or is, and very hard for the family, not me, but for her mother and siblings to really wrap their mind around what this is, because it's a non-binary. She says she's non-binary and asexual, a but identifies as a they, but as female with a female partner. So it's something that I could bear witness to, because after 5/5, she came to visit me, having cut off all contact with her family for not being able to embrace whatever this is. So I've just been witnessing it, and it's definitely an evolution. So what I'm going to say, I see this as an evolution. The rest of the children don't have any interest in dating. They're not sexually like wild and oriented as like that. And I was like, well, that's different. Maybe this petri dish or the cheese that we're living in, this culture, doesn't require what it required when I was going through my puberty or whatever that was. And I was kind of like digging deep into this, because I did my shamanic training in Peru. I've seen the agriculture of the ancient Inca and what they can do with corn, what they've genetically modified. They have 350 species of potato. We are in a infancy of what we even think we know. So I just like, get out of your head. You don't know nothing. And observe. That's what I've kind of like been doing for myself. And I've never identified totally feminine, because I have a lot of masculine trait. It's almost equal masculine and feminine. And when you came out with the idea of what the Ark of Baphomet, when I read it, and how I had to sort it out so that I had to pick a sex, and I was going to be feminine on the inside and masculine on the outside or whatever, but I'm missing a part of myself. So I always felt like I was looking to reclaim my belonging, which of course I named my website that, Reclaim Belonging. And then I was like, I did a whole art installation with those overalls I wore to the Sunday thing with all the re's, because it was remember, reclaim, what is all this because you don't really see what you don't see, you can't see. So, but you can the cells know, the waters know. And so then I started to do this deep dive into the periodic table, and Walter Russell's periodic table, if anyone has seen it, it's a spiral. And all of creation is a spiral. Every bone in your body spirals. Every thing divides as a phi or a phi. And then it's like these cell divisions and all of this stuff that is so magnificent that I can't help but think we're coming into a hermaphroditic experience where I'm going to find the missing part of me that's inside of me, witnessing it with her name was Maisie, now it's Zephyr. She named herself the wind. And the other thing that I really was enjoying, Pi's talk on water and the sacredness of water, because water has memory. Water, and Veda Austin's work on water and freezing it, it can pick up everything, your dreams, your emotions, your feelings. I mean, she's even taken it further than the Dr. Emoto. So I just feel like we're in this great unknowing. And the more I can witness and not, I don't know, I have a high integrity with self, but I don't have any expectation of other to see what I see. And I don't really have too many people to talk about what I see. And yet I feel like we're evolving. Like the light that's coming in right now is changing the cellular aspects of our DNA that is spiraling, like that periodic table that Walter Russell showed, that the denser elements are on the bottom and then the higher elements on the top. And if you think about water, it's two gases that make a liquid. I'm like, how does that happen? H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. So we're going to have like amazing discoveries of plasma energy, etheric energy, all kinds of things. And our DNA is going to ascend into this homecoming, I guess. That's how I'm I'm sensing. So
And
thanks for listening.
thank you. This is really affirming to hear. Same from Mo too, and even just seeing the thumbs up from people makes me feel like just less paranoid about discussing these things, because I I first became really nervous about this as I was writing Arc of Baphomet, and it's touching, Lori, that you see that too, because seriously, this is like a big move. And if you take these things to heart, it would look the stumbles, the mutilation that we're seeing right now, I think is what it's like when you do not know the difference between rape and sex
Mhm.
as being on the same level, right? And until you do, you're going to think that you are acquiring sex by rape the same way you are going to acquire the missing adrenal by removing your adrenal. And I think that's truly at the heart of I've mutilated myself, is not necessarily the idea that they were born in the wrong body. It's that they're not able to see the chroma, the color. Remember, chromosome means color body. They're not able to see their true color yet because they only have two modes. It's dark or it's light, right? And that's a binary. And all of us, meaning the older generation, we're watching the younger generation come up, and we're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? You're going to fucking explode. And we cannot even fathom. This is why I talk about imagination. I think the only way the older, the more venerated witness like me is going to remember and understand this is to go back to your imagination and remember when your hymen was fucking ripped by someone who told you you need to fucking grow up. And they were telling you you need to be a boy or a girl. No one said it out loud. I was wearing tights one day in 5th grade. It felt fucking amazing. My God, running through the hallways in tights. And that was wrong. And when I add those tiny experiences on and on and on, my growing up, the reason why you suffer, think about this, the reason why you suffer fucking puberty is because someone is holding a gun to your head and telling you pick a fucking mode. Pick a mode. And the whole time you're like, but I don't want victory. I want wisdom. I don't need to win. I just want to be wise. And you would not need to win if we've achieved the population vibe enough to where we can wander around in milk our entire life and still survive. And the fall of Western civilization is what people would call this. And I would say, yeah, I remember when you said that to me too. I remember when you told me when I was 10. You need to grow the fuck up because the world's real. And if you don't go out there and get in this, then the real world's going to get you. And the reason why I am so fucking hurt, the reason why people call me bipolar, the reason why I don't fit into society is because when I grew up, I didn't even have the context to realize they were fucking wrong. That the truths they fucking told me were the truths aren't even fucking true. They're not even fucking true. So I sacrificed that child. I sacrificed that mode a long time ago under the guillotine of puberty so I could enter into this mode, and it turns out the entire fucking thing was a lie. And I'm just saying, if I was not grounded, if I was not surrounded by a support network, if I did not have the nuance, this is why I'm mad about it. Because the nuance of my microphone is directly proportional to the amount of trauma that I absorbed growing up, which means that I would be fucking 500 times more lit if I trusted more. And I would trust more if back then someone would have had my back and said, no, it's not real. No, it's not. You don't know. You don't need to rush into this because where you're fucking going, it's just as fucking imaginary as you being a trans cowboy right now. This whole idea of you going to be a St. Elmo's Fire lawyer is fucking bullshit, James. You don't even fucking know it yet. You don't even fucking know it yet because you got John Hughes painting the picture for you the whole way saying this is the secret to dilation. And you know what? It's through a pink vagina. Pretty in Pink was me being coaxed by the world to fit into the role of, dude, you need to grow a dick and shoot some white sauce and make it into something because that's what society needs. And I'm okay with that. I love the life I have. And at the same time, I can look back and see, and I can imagine how much more painful it would be if I even had the context. If I had more of a context for what was happening to me at the time, it would have destroyed me even more. And I could see myself mutilating myself years later. And I did mutilate myself. I mutilated myself my senior year, then my freshman, sophomore year, then my senior year. I was not well because I was surrounded by fucking lies. And I'd sacrificed so much for those. That multiplied by 10, it's only going to get worse, which is why society is falling apart. Thank fucking God, because those two modes are simply not going to cut it anymore. They're just not going to work. It's not going to fucking work. And so I think we're looking at a long road ahead until we find the groove, because all we're doing is cannibalizing the people that are trying to find the groove. And frankly, the ones that are leading the way end up being distraught because they're turning into Bonfire of the Vanities, because they end up being turned into archetypal people that turn into pariahs anyway. So you end up with like the Dylan McVolney or Vaney. You end up with these candy-coated plastic versions of what still comes back to sexuality. Isn't it interesting how it all comes back to sexuality, when I think what the entire point of what the plant's trying to do is to get away from sexuality and say, can we please just move past this? And then when you start to deconstruct the gender language, you realize, holy fuck, yeah, this is what we're doing. We're doing this, we just haven't had the language to fully understand. And we're ashamed. We're ashamed of it because fresh growth will always feel like shame. It will always feel that way because it's exposed. You don't have enough dead skin, right? Covering that sense of, ooh, it burns. Oh, it burns. Oh, why does it burn? Oh, because it's new. Oh, because it's new. It's fucking burns because it's new. That's why. And we need to wait till this dies enough to where this cuticle is no longer new, where it's got enough dead bodies on it to where it doesn't burn anymore. It feels normalized now. So in a lot of ways, you see the cutting edge, fucking pun intended, oh sick, but the cutting edge of this movement is the mutilators that are rushing out front and dying on their own grenades. And the grenade is pointless. It's not even what needs to happen. But if you look at it from a great work perspective, I don't see how you can call a 50,000 year destiny through a vibration by anything but a great work. But how you can see this great work and not see this will be the only way progress would be able to bubble. It would have to look like this. And for generations and generations, there'd be war where dead Marines would die on the hills, not of goodness, but on, wow, that was stupid. Wow, that was stupid. And that ultimately where we gain the most wisdom is from the people that were willing to show us, look how stupid I was. And for you to survive and be able to go, wow, I do not want to be that stupid, right? So this is the ultimate sacrifice. And the people that are sacrificing them are the only ones that are making the mistakes. And thank God, because that's how we're learning, right? Pi, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was trying to make a qualification for that's not mediocre to the scale of things, but I was looking for more qualitative things, though, just some of the details, because I think the details say a lot about the overall work, and I think you can look at it from a lens from both ways. But what Lori was talking about, that's a real touchy subject. I haven't really been able to, I don't know if I should even bring it up, but once again, I just happen to live in this place where we have all these like bisphenol A and like plastics runoff, and there's no industry or anything. It can't be anything but an administration, and it causes an asexual seeming, or like especially like I've watched it over the years, cause there's plenty of women that look this masculine in the past, but not so many, and not so many that really want to feel like and be their manly, like even before it was like more of a fashionable thing. And so it seems to me that it's being administered. So if you go with my theory about everything being slightly better in every category, why? I mean, I'm not sure which way it would go and why it would be better, but it just go from what we know. People are more asexual, and why is that slightly better? And what is it slightly better than? Like, is it in place of hermaphrodism? Is that like a bad thing? Does a lot of bad stuff happen when that reset happens? Because see, I see a hand in here, and so I could justify it if, like, let's just, I don't even think this, but I'm just making it up as an example. Let's just say hermaphrodism is like horribly destructive for society, and so there's been part of this great plan is to create something different in the category of genetic reset. Of course, there'd be many categories, and obviously there's been more, and so you can't have this discussion because, like what you said you've watched people be born this way, and that bisphenol A is like an endocrine disruptor that totally changes your, and I've just seen more people be born that way, but you can't say that to people because, that kind of stymied the whole conversation because, when people say that, they're saying, no, you can't, that's too much. It's like, I'm not going to believe that a chemical that was administered in the water is the reason I feel, it has to be a different reason. And so you can't have that conversation yet. It's a real thing, and I've witnessed it. I don't know why we're like this whole water runoff. Anybody who's south of the Missouri River watershed where all the sandhill is, it's all in the water. And it's the only hot spot of that size in the entire country. And then it trickles down. It's like, it's where you'd want to apply it so that it would affect like the lower Mississippi and other places. So anybody who lives in like Missouri or other Midwest places would have the same thing, even though it doesn't show up on the map. And so it's kind of like, like one thing about the Downs is it affects memory. Like, you make some comment that creates an engram of desire with somebody with Down syndrome, they'll remember that like 5 months later. They said, like, even if it's just, just a whimsy of a comment, like about traveling somewhere. It's like, you said we were going to Chicago, and they might just show up with a suitcase packed on the day, like in a couple months, we might be going to Chicago, and then I've seen it and show up with a suitcase packed 2 months later. It's like, well, you said we were going to Chicago, and then be like very incredibly like disappointed, and so there's some type of a memory reset. And who knows what that looks in multiple generations. But I'm just, and I'm not saying that there isn't other reasons, but I'm just saying nobody looks at that reason. It's very large scale, and the parts per million are very small, that below any like FDA thing. It's like 200 times more powerful and occupies the same, tetral shape, molecular shape as, hormones do. But it would explain, the increased amount of like asexual type, it's a real thing, but I'm just saying part of it's that, so how do you delineate if there is some type of a new collective conscious or frequency or something like that? How do you distinguish it from this other thing that's going on a large scale?
Well,
So
I don't
that's,
think I don't think you need to. So it's like okay to say it's all about the water, and there's these people that are putting stuff in the water, or you got to find better water, or unless you're talking about the water, there's no reason to talk about anything. That's a perfectly valid way of looking at it. I think you could also say though that in a greater scheme of things, in a great work kind of way, if a society gets to the point to where it's no longer using clay to store its food, then it would switch to another medium, and that it would be so winky of God that that medium would also have a an output chemical that would cause society as a whole to stop their mode of pure estrogen testosterone and to blur more. And so you could argue that it's constructed and it's a failure based on the maladaptation of some evil force that's occurred. Or you could also say, yes, and isn't it cool that built into the evolution of society, this spiraling sort of ripple, that the ripple is always compensating for itself and always knows what it needs at the time to propagate, and that the only proof that you would need to know that it is working is simply memorex. The king of the rex means king. Mem is the memory. And so to remember the longest would give you the clearest picture over how long this ripple survived, and the length of the ripple surviving would only give you more confidence that it is a great work simply because we're still here.
But still, you
And
can still have the conversation that, I'm not here to like debate and I was only talking about the water just in terms of conversations that like university people have, not like that's some dictum. But I'm just, these are just observations that I can make, they're pretty long term, and there's not, it's definitely being put in. It's not, we don't have more plastics here than other part of the country. We don't have an industry. These are like rangelands. There's no way for it
we
to
have more
adopt
plastics
water.
now than we did 20,000 years ago, was the point I was trying to make. I wasn't trying to say that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's like, I'm just delineating. This is like, like if you have a color code of purple being like the most, it's like, here's Nebraska, and then there's the rest of the country, nowhere else like that. And so it's so large scale, and there's just no source. There's no source that I know the country. There's no possible type of, like, even if somebody was secretly driving in landfill trash, which they're not, because people would notice that. I mean, it's actually the least conspiracy theory, because the amount of work that it would have to be something else. It's just, I see what you're saying, that it would be winky, and I agree with that point, but I also know the industry, and I know the timing of it, and that as soon as the General Mills and the different companies, bought all the organic companies and changed the organic rules, there began to be this extra administration of chemicals that went along with it, supposedly outside of the industry, but it's really not, because they also own the companies that are involved with all the, the traditional farming. And so everything's kind of done in unison. And I know this is getting a little they-ish, but I'm just wondering, I don't want to think that way. I'm not trying to be, I'm just saying this is what I see. Why? And why is that a benefit to society to make people more asexual? That's my main question. I don't even care about what's actually happening. I mean, I'm just saying, based on this observation, there's a reason that somebody thinks it's a benefit to society, either transitionally or genetically or in some way, for people to be more asexual.
Right.
Why would that?
And that person,
question.
right, and that person is also the one who's somehow, they have to hypnotize all of us to keep using the plastic and buying that too. And that goes back to your point about how, and that's why they bought all the food, and that we, we're only doing it because we don't have a choice. And I think we actually do have a choice. And I think deep down, the reason why we don't object to the plastic is because of what I'm saying, because we know that we are, where we are headed is the appetite that the Oracle mythology is more true than we think. But I don't want to dissolve your your mindset here. I don't like you saying but though, because I think everything I'm saying would totally fit with a mass collective of corporate psychopaths that are feeding, because I think seagulls are going to be, no matter where there's a hot dog, there's going to be a fucking seagull. I believe in the seagull though. I think this is a healthy part of the cannibalization. So to me, I don't like the but. It feels argumentative to me. It feels like you want to argue, is just how it feels to me, because I think that all the evil corporate stuff is part of the great work. That's actually why it's the great work, is because the fools actually end up creating the beauty and the entire time they're being selfish the entire time. That's free energy. The free energy device is the cannibals. And that's something I've just always seen over time that makes me know that God's winking, because it's built into the phi. But I think that's built into phi. So I don't even think it's something that we have to make sure that we're doing. I think that we wouldn't have survived this long if it required conscious neocortexual strategy, you know? I think really we just have to go out and just follow our bliss, and that the harmony
Well,
of the seed itself creates that kind of ripple that makes it survive. But again, I don't want to
I,
argue. I'm not even trying to disagree. I think that it fits that
not,
there's psychopaths in here.
I'm just naturally argumentative sounding, like when I get excited about something, but this is just, um, I don't have that many things that like I'm an expert in and have years of observation and hands-on experience where I can make some type of assessments like that. Like I'm not out looking for backroom meetings or things like that. It's like whatever. I'm just like, to me, that's not that big of a deal,
Mhm.
to compared to the consent that people give, like you said, that that we keep using the plastic and people give their consent to it ultimately, and
Um,
don't demand
can I share
other.
my thoughts quick to this?
Yeah, go ahead, Lloyd.
Uh, sorry, Lulu, just quick before we're missing that point that Pi made here. Over 25 years, a quote of Goethe inspired me so much, where Mephisto, where he asked in Faust, he asked Mephisto who he is, and Mephisto told him that he belongs to that force that wants to create evil but creates good in the world. Like so above, so below. I have a very destructive part in my life, very destructive, very evil, and so on. But this was a necessary part to find my path here. So um, maybe this sounds like evil. For me, that's mob mentality. Mob, they are the best of the mob and give the mob what it wants. And Babylon is a scaffolding. It's not to, the world is not here to enslave us or something like this. We can grow out of Babylon, personally. The past. So the truth is, for me, it's like a slogan, PR word. It's like advertising, authenticity. That's the path is for the few, not for the many. The trans people we're bashing today, maybe they are the witches 100 years ago, that the mob said, what are this for crazy people, Why don't leave this path? But they have to be burnt. So we got to the other step. I think all these parts are necessary. And but we have all of our perception to rate this as good or evil, because I don't know if it makes sense. I have two daughters, so they're in the puberty. They're looking today mostly this makeup tutorials made by men, not by women. There are guys who makeup tutorials that were men, and when when I make my joke about them, my daughter said, Dad, why so homophobic? Please don't be so homophobic. You know, for them that's normal. They grew out of this old frequency we are tapped in now. So it's all progress, even it don't look like progress, you know. And for me, my destructive ways were progress too, even if I was in Hades at this time. But I have to make this ways, and I think we're in a larger scale. We made these kind of things too. You know, I would accept these kind of talks or thoughts if we are for thousands of years at the same point, and we tell us why there no progress. We're all sitting here and talking, and nothing happens. You know, the road to sovereignty, what we call now freedom, it's not an old idea. We are in the not even in the puberty of mankind. Where that's our first date out of home, you know, out of Babylon or out of something else. All these things are new. We discover this past new, and like I mentioned before, it's like when we're in a very religious grew up in a very religious home or very strong household, like me, like most of us. Dude, when you are in your new home and when you living alone, mostly in the next few months, your home would look like shit. You know, you have to be. It would look like a mess. You know, you would live like a mess. I did. Most of us did. As part of our new freedom, we got to the extreme, and now we do this today. It's look like extreme, but for me, you know, I don't want you. I don't want you sell. I don't want sell you my thoughts. I want only share my perception. You know, for me, it's like
No,
natural. Because
I'm really
I
not
come
trying
from.
to argue. I'm really not trying to be argumentative. If I
Yeah.
can just delineate, I'm just really actually excited about this idea because I haven't thought about it as deeply as I should. But why the asexuality though? That's I mean, that's what I'm excited about
Yeah,
because
and I'm
this thing with the
suggesting that,
water,
well, if it's
well,
all about
it's
the water, then it's
multi-gener.
not about humans. So, you know, so yeah, that does end my conversation. If it is all about
Oh,
water, then I can't even discuss it because it's water. It's not human, you know. And
no,
that's
it's
cool
just that
too.
it could be other things too, you know. I'm just saying, like, just this one thing that I know, like, I wouldn't maybe expect that this would be everything, but you
Mhm.
know, just the thing with water, it's something that's going to be multi-generational, you know, like it's
Yeah.
going to be there for a while. So I'm just extrapolating and I'm like, okay, so it's something where somebody thinks it's good for us to have less of a sexual desire across generations. You know, I'm just going with you know
Yeah.
the logic here, and
Well,
so then
I want to confirm. I don't think you're being argumentative either. I did say what I said though because emotionally I'm used to talking to you, and it did feel that way to me, and I just more wanted to convey that.
yeah,
But also I do not think that you are being argumentative at all. I really do
yeah.
see and sense your
But I
enthusiasm for
was
the.
actually kind of being a little argumentative now that I look back. But
Okay, well now
just
you're
because I got
arguing
this
over
way,
whether or not you're being
yeah.
argumentative, which is
Now I'm
freaking
being
adorable.
argumentative. See that proved
Yeah,
it.
yeah, good stuff.
But
Lori,
okay. But my
okay,
point was like that, you know, and it's just weird that I was just thinking, I was thinking about harvesting my garlic and about how garlic doesn't sexually reproduce. But if there's an anomaly and you get this little bulbils, you can open them up tediously and you can open up the flowers and you can sometimes get them to reproduce.
Mhm.
But see, the thing is, what I believe the asexualness leads to is cloning, you know, and it happens, who knows how, probably through genetic engineering and food from days past, for all we know. But that's what it leads to, is it leads to, you know, when you have a I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's not good, but you know, I just
Yeah.
want to, just a curious fellow. I'm like, why is that?
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
is, I mean,
and
obviously
I
somebody thinks that's better,
I
you
think
know?
it's good that the question's there, and I hope that by me just giving one answer that this isn't me trying to say or close it. I think it's a really good question, but I want to also point out that if you look since the 70s, you've had this the women's revolution has broken the glass ceiling and that they've gone out and they've gotten their own careers. And that I think that we can look at, if we relook at this whole thing, we're watching the mode of what someone is. Someone is allowed to have a mode that's non-binary, and that you can be an accountant, you can be a wife, you can be a vice president, you could be a business owner, you can be a cop, you could be a fireman, and that this is the closest that we can hallucinate the energy of what we're talking about, that we are so fucking transformative that we change our mode so much that we can embody the sense of being a judge, and literally we put people in jail based on our gender. This is what I'm trying to say. Judge is a kind of gender, and that we're only seeing the very crust of this because we're understanding how mutable our energy is when it used to not be. The same way we used to be convinced that currency had to be tangible, something you could touch, and is now etheric, right? And that the idea of credit comes out of this, the idea of bankruptcy comes out of this, the idea of pride comes out of this, the idea of reputation comes out of this. These are all transitive forms of matter, and that now we're able to see those things, and that we already have needed to switch into a mode that allows us to explore this terrain from a non-binary standpoint. So the sexuality would have to drop off because it's the only way that we could open and we already have. It's not like this is happening now. This has been happening since the 50s. You're just watching it slowly, and it's creeped up so slow that all of a sudden it's in the room. We're like, whoa, 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 and it's kind of freaking some people out. Lori, thank you so much for being patient. Go ahead.
Yeah, I never felt like I was bi or more than a woman, so I don't, it's just like, but watching the way I've been unique this whole time and not really received in my uniqueness has been very difficult, but somebody had to be first. And I feel like I was lucky enough to be first so that I can now witness these unique flowers flowering and being able to hold the container for a vase, you know? And also in the lineage of my lineage is a brother who was an autist and grandchildren that are autists. So this autistic, whatever that is, and and then I'll say, you know, like I wanted to talk a little bit about water. Because water has like magical properties. There's an experiment with a red laser. They've shown the laser through Viagra into a sealed water bottle. The 80-year-old man drinks the water bottle and has full Viagra without any of the side effects. That's like totally there. So we don't really understand ether or water at all. We don't understand anything about even the chemistry of powers of agreements that our cellular memory even agrees with. So, you know, almost like I'm getting into the more I don't know. And I don't need to know. And it's like you know, if you wanted to like look at the experiment of my genes or whatever, it'd be interesting, but how can you even isolate it? They didn't live in one place. They weren't the watershed of the chemical experiment of the corn. They're not children of the corn. They're children of traveling around many different areas of the United States. And so like what made this? And why is it so prevalent right now? Why is it like United States? I don't know if other countries are having as much trans, but it's definitely seems to be. I know more people now than I ever did growing up. That, I mean, I was unique, but I wasn't non-binary. I was always woman, feeling like I wanted to have a child and all that. It wasn't like I was like that. And so now my daughter's like that. And we're like the, you know, androgynous family. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wanted to end with that. So thanks for,
This is all just such juicy. There's just so many different angles to this, and I can tell you from what I've been looking at, it trans doesn't seem to be a luxury of a first world country anymore. And I don't know if it ever was. It does seem to be more of a morphic field, just across the board. This is more now. I don't think we'll ever be able to know how many of those people we were just burning or banishing before. That's going to be some tricky math. Maybe I shouldn't say you'll never know, but it's going to be hard to speculate. And it's water, the
It seems like
elements, all these different
it
elements.
seems like it could be large scale homeopathy, because that's how homeopathy works, where you
Mhm.
imprint the water onto something. I mean, that's the way a lot of it works. But
Yeah.
you touched upon it in the Ark of Baphomet and some of the archetypes, and it reminded me of the old Edgar Rice Martian Chronicles, where these creatures, they literally on their arms, they grew it was kind of like they were part vegetable. And so hermaphrodism, might be something to do with plant life and cloning too. There might be another genetic archetype that's involved there, or maybe a transitional
Yeah.
state of some, like the garlic I was talking. It's literally, you take a piece of yourself and then you grow another piece of yourself. And so it doesn't have to be ancient aliens that had laboratories. There may be a natural human way that we clone.
Yeah.
I consider that,
Well,
to
let's
be
also
involved.
not. This kind of goes back into the water argument, but transposons are your genetic coil is coiled in such a way to where it actually creates a harmonic to where genes jump. They they sort of shuffle through the chain, and the shuffling through the chain, you can't stop that. It's very much a this is the weather, and my genes are suffering, if you want to use that word. They're suffering the weather of the times. And so the transposons themselves are actually more adapting you more probably than your own willpower. But I think this is because we haven't learned. Until we know that this is something we can do, we're only going to be doing this by accident. And I think that we've been doing this by mistake through the training wheels of sexuality. That for the longest time, we've been taught that as emotarians, with the ability to emote will, you were able to transmogrify your body into a mode that facilitates your belief structure the most. And that the reason why you're seeing so many male to female, I'll just take this as an example, is the psyche that person sees in a woman and the psyche that is allowed to be exercised as a woman in society is appealing to them. They're saying that they've been trapped inside the wrong body because they want to express something that a binary is just not going to fit. My sexuality has been complicated as fuck. I don't even want to share it with you guys. It's fucking weird as shit. And one thing I'll tell you is that one thing I've noticed about my sexuality is that it doesn't have a lot to do with sex. It never has. I fall in love with people. I fall in love with fucking people. I literally fall in love with them. It's just, if I can find a niche where I can sink a carabiner and turn it sideways, I will climb that fucking mountain. And it doesn't matter what sex you are. I've noticed that from a young age. I think that if I would have been unclear, I would have thought it meant that I was bisexual. That's what I would have thought it would have meant. And I just don't think that that's what it is. I think that I hate I hate that this sounds arrogant. Please forgive me, but I think it's just a higher form of love. It's just a higher love. And when I say higher, it's just I'm not falling in love with the fact that you have a genital that I wish to fuck I had. Do you know why I'm not falling in love with that? Because I'm okay with that now. Do you know why I'm okay with that now? Because I'm comfortable with my sexuality. You know why I'm comfortable with my sexuality? Because you fuckers told me that if I needed to be a man because it's the only way I could fit through reality, and you were lying the whole fucking time. That made me comfortable with my sexuality. Because I realized right away, I'm not going to be that, I'm not going to be that, I'm not going to be that. I'm not a dad today because I wouldn't be a good man. I wouldn't be a good father. A father is a mode. You come home, you bring things home. You sit in chair. You do not have emotional turmoils. You do not come home and tell me about this new idea you have about cosmology. No, you come home because you turn pipes all day. And the pipe wrench in the back of the truck is there and your hands are dirty and you shut the fuck up and you eat meatloaf. And that's a mode. That's a mode. And when I was young, I was like, oh my fuck, I don't want to do that. And I didn't have a choice because I didn't want to be gay. I didn't want to be gay. Do you know why I didn't want to be gay? Because women are so fucking attractive. I understand that I have an addiction to the pheromones of women. If you could call anything that I've had a drug problem with over my life, it is, I don't know, that'd be vulgar. It is woman. It is that. And I think it comes back to Ark of Baphomet. I think it comes back to that whole idea. And when you unlock that, my addiction suddenly changes and it not only becomes sustainable, it might even look like I'm not addicted anymore. Why? Because I'm no longer hooked to something that I need to survive. Now I'm just understand why I love something so much. And that's a different mode. You have two brain receptors, very different brain receptors. When you fall in love, your first brain receptor is, oh my God, we could fuck. I mean, this is like the lower level, but it's like, oh, we could fuck. It's all dopamine. It's all, this is excitement. Anything could happen. Anything could happen. And that the reason what causes a relationship to couple is much like a railroad track, because there's a different receptor that promotes longevity and monogamy. It's a completely different receptor. So the entire chemical relationship of love is a coupling where it's promising one thing. You're going to get neuroreceptor 1 the whole time. It's all dopamine and rush, fulfillment, erection, Viagra. It's all those things. But then it slowly sinks in and it lets go, and this subterranean tractor beam gets hold. And then you end up in a relationship for 20 years. And that took a special kind of transposon to exist in the water that was outside of our own personal will, that would convince us to enter into a relationship where we would be coupled for 20, 30, 40, 50 years with people that probably hate our fucking guts. And that the only reason why that would happen is because that mode was necessary, because something more important was there than whether or not you were having a good time. And it was the survival of the species.
I think you could look at it as a higher love, and I basically could call myself asexual, but it's not because I got old. It's not because I don't have sexual urges. It's just that my partner, even though we've been together so long, we just, like what you said, kind of feel compared to people that were kind of prudes. And then you just don't, but I'm telling you, like, the amount of creativity that goes on that you can admire between people, like if you're two creative people, it does feel like a higher form of love, because it's
and it's easy to be confused. If you're looking through a two-color spectrum, right, it's very easy to be confused and to think that you're this with someone. Think about the typical story of a girl goes to college, falls in love with a college professor. What do you think's really happening? You could say, oh, it's because she's in love. It could be that she's sexually attracted to a Woody Allen type fucking character. You could say that. Or it could be that she's looking through a mode in a society that doesn't even have the fucking hue on the color chart, right? This is pinkle. She's seeing fucking pinkle. And we have purple and we have pink. We don't have a fucking pinkle. So if she sees pinkle, she's going to have to pick one of those hues and stick with it. And ultimately, that's why Elvis and pelvis are the same. That's why in the 50s, all it took was, and just by shaking your hips, everyone fucking goes nuts. They go nuts because the transposons are at that point where the fertility, it's almost like it peaked there, if you think about it. Like that was the peak of like full lean in, full sexual. Okay, now we can dial it back because we've reached pure pelvis. We've reached pure pelvis. Now we can come back to, let's take it back to Boy George. We're going to set us next gear. We're going to move into some Culture Club, a little bit of Steve Winwood, and we're going to end up with On the Road to La Maria, you know, wherever it is. That's, and that is the Walter Russell. That's just math, man. That's just math. There's the only way we could make it this far is if it was math. There's no fucking way we could have guessed right this many times, right? So I have to believe that. You don't have to, but I really, it's hard for me not to believe that. Anyway, we're 6 minutes over. Really love this conversation, and thank you, Pi, you especially for weighing in. I don't just mean you especially, but seriously, thank you everyone for weighing in. Lori, great to see you. Great to see everyone. Renee, you got any words for us?
Oh wow! Just I really enjoyed this airship, and we have Mercury and the Kazemi with the sun right now. So we've got this amazing communication going through, and I can feel all the bubbling up and expanding we're doing as we see it out in the world and within us. So thanks for joining us at 8:21. Really enjoyed everybody today, and go ahead and unmute yourself and say goodbye.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, everybody. Hello. Good to see
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for putting up with me.
Oh no, thank you, Pi. Don't you say that. Keep coming back.
Bye, everybody.
Love you guys. Glad you made it. All right, take care, guys.
Okay.